Buongiorno. C'è un altro microfono aperto? Gia. Buongiorno a tutti. Ah, sì, però bisogna evitare il fischio. Ok? O cambio. Ecco, ci siamo. Non l'aveva messa qui. È lui. Ok. Ok. Qui poi riprendiamo. Allora, prima di arrivare alla consegna dei diplomi abbiamo un seminario della Florida Virtual School su un fenomeno molto interessante che non vi deve preoccupare, erogazione online di didattica per le scuole. È un fenomeno molto interessante che va capito, va analizzato, potrebbe avere un ruolo anche in Italia, per questo diciamo, pensiamo che questo seminario sia interessante. E poi abbiamo nel primo pomeriggio una discussione su quello che voi avete fatto, cosa caratterizza un'esperienza didattica di qualità, come si fa a capire in che senso un'esperienza didattica di qualità e quali sono i problemi nel raccontare un'esperienza didattica di qualità. Ma prima di tutto abbiamo il saluto del rettore del Politecnico di Milano, che è il professor Azzone, a cui lascio la parola.
Grazie, mi allontano un po' dalla cuffia così magari l'interferenza è più bassa. Allora, grazie innanzitutto a voi per essere qui e grazie soprattutto per aver lavorato in questi mesi, in questi anni su un progetto che vi ha coinvolto personalmente e che ha coinvolto il Politecnico di Milano. È un progetto, quello del DOL, per noi molto importante in quanto è coerente con alcune priorità del nostro Ateneo. La prima è il ruolo che un Ateneo come il Politecnico vuole avere all'interno di questo Paese. Nella nostra missione c'è quello di fare ricerca di qualità, di fare formazione di qualità, ma anche di contribuire allo sviluppo e alla competitività in generale del nostro Paese. Allora, ovviamente siamo una piccola rotella all'interno di questo Paese, però uno dei modi in cui vogliamo cercare di contribuire allo sviluppo del Paese è cercare di interagire con chi si occupa direttamente di creazione di capitale umano, quindi con chi svolge un'attività di formazione a tutti i livelli nel nostro Paese. C'è anche un interesse bieco e personale in tutto questo, permetteteci. La qualità della ricerca e della formazione del Politecnico dipende moltissimo dalla qualità delle persone che ci arrivano. Qualcuno dice rubbish in, rubbish out. Se arrivano persone di qualità non è che riusciamo a rovinarlo troppo, anche se ci mettiamo talvolta d'impegno. Se arrivano persone poco preparate, poco formate, chiunque, se anche fosse molto più bravo di noi, farebbe fatica a creare delle persone, dei leader, degli innovatori di cui questo Paese ha fortemente bisogno. Quindi credo che attraverso l'interazione con voi, con le vostre competenze, facciamo quello che è non solo un nostro dovere ma anche un nostro interesse diretto. Un secondo motivo per cui sono lieto di quello che è accaduto, di quello che sta accadendo, è che ritengo che nel nostro Paese spesso ci lamentiamo della difficoltà di avere dei progetti integrati per il Paese, insomma c'è un senso di sfiducia nelle istituzioni abbastanza generale. Allora io credo che il nostro dovere come istituzione pubblica sia quello di non cadere nella cultura del pianisteo, di non lamentarsi delle cose che non vanno, ma di cercare al nostro interno di fare tutto il possibile per farle andare meglio. In questo è essenziale che diverse istituzioni, in questo esempio gli uffici scolastico regionale, il Ministero, il Politecnico, collaborano ciascuno per quanto di propria competenza per cercare di far andare le cose un pochettino meglio. Talvolta mi dicono che sono troppo ottimista, ma ho detto se no non mi mettevo a provare a fare il rettore di questo Ateneo se fossi stato solo pessimista. Un ultimo cenno, perché sono andato più lungo di quanto pensassi, è il fatto che poi tutti questi grandi disegni, progetti, missioni che le istituzioni e le organizzazioni hanno le gambe per camminare, permettetevi, solo se ci sono poi delle singole persone che ci mettono il proprio tempo, il proprio impegno, il sacrificio che si fa su altre cose, perché ogni momento di studio e di formazione è un investimento in noi stessi, certamente, ma è qualcosa che ci fa rinunciare a delle altre cose. Quindi credo che, permettetemi, sia da parte di chi ha insegnato, di chi ha fatto il tutor in questo progetto, sia soprattutto da parte di chi ha studiato, si è formato e ha visto questo come un investimento nel proprio lavoro e nelle proprie competenze, da parte mia non ci possa essere che un plauso e un ringraziamento complessivo. Quindi vi ringrazio ancora e buon lavoro e complimenti a tutti.
Abbiamo ancora un saluto da parte del Ministero, il professor Piscitelli, che ci segue da diversi anni, in varie ruoli.
Sì, buongiorno a tutti. Ho il piacere qui di rappresentare il Ministero dell'Istruzione, Università e Ricerca che segue con grande attenzione e interesse le iniziative di formazione per docenti del Politecnico di Milano. Permettetemi innanzitutto di ringraziare per l'invito il magnifico Rettore, il Professore Paolini, e di ringraziare voi perché, lo dicevamo poco fa in un briefing con il Professore Paolini e i colleghi, non si può disegnare una scuola di qualità senza docenti di qualità. E i docenti per essere particolarmente efficaci nella loro opera devono essere ben formati a fare questo lavoro così complesso. Il tema che si affronta oggi è per noi di particolare interesse, quindi mi raggiungerà più tardi il direttore generale Chiappetta che è molto attento a questo tema della scuola online. Noi abbiamo fatto delle sperimentazioni in questo campo perché come sapete in Italia ci sono numerosissime isole, piccole isole, e quindi abbiamo già fatto esperienza di modalità di insegnamento con scuole e classi aperte sulla terraferma e sull'isola per esempio. Quindi la cosa ci interessa molto da vicino e allora sarà una buona occasione per riflettere insieme con voi su queste straordinarie opportunità che ci offre la tecnologia oggi. Io mi limito a un brevissimo saluto anche perché come anticipavo nel pomeriggio ci raggiungerà il direttore Chiappetta. Grazie.
Adesso passiamo diciamo alla parte di merito, cioè la Florida Virtual School. Allora non vi spiego cos'è perché ve lo dirà poi direttamente il protagonista. Vorrei solo darvi per quale motivo abbiamo pensato che fosse utile presentarvi questo discorso. Sappiamo tutti che si può fare didattica online, quindi non stiamo parlando di cosa si potrebbe fare. Stiamo parlando, e quello che a me ha impressionato, è qualcosa che funziona per centinaia di migliaia di allievi o per centinaia di migliaia di ore l'anno, quindi non stiamo parlando di quello che si può fare, ma stiamo parlando di qualcosa che succede. Quindi un fenomeno di cui dimensioni a me erano sconosciute, credo che a molti siano sconosciute, e quindi è un fenomeno interessante capire che succede, come mai. L'altro discorso che è molto articolato, molto complesso, è come mai funziona questo marchingegno, cioè in che rapporto c'è con la scuola tradizionale, che rapporto c'è con le altre attività. È una cosa abbastanza complicata da capire perché il mondo nordamericano poi è molto diverso dal nostro, ma quindi non stiamo parlando di imitazioni tout court o di replicare i fenomeni, però è un fenomeno che va capito anche perché al di là di quello che loro fanno ci fa capire come a volte la nostra scuola sia rigorosa a imporre dei paletti di cui non si capisce perché esistano e invece diciamo si potrebbero cogliere delle flessibilità, delle opportunità che sono oggi fattibili anche mediante le tecnologie e che non si colgono. Per inciso un fatto formale che vi dico, non so se poi verrà ripetuto dall'oratore, la Florida Virtual School attualmente è l'equivalente di un nostro ufficio scolastico regionale, cioè per risolvere tanti problemi normativi quello che hanno fatto ha detto tu sei l'equivalente di un ufficio scolastico regionale, quindi hai tutte le capacità di manovra che è dal punto di vista anche normativo una cosa molto interessante. Lo speaker, quello che ci presenta la Freedom Virtual School è Andy Ross e diciamo che io ho sentito un seminario a Orlando, a una conferenza di learning appunto e l'abbiamo invitato, siamo molto contenti che sia venuto, lo ringraziamo e lascio la parola a lui. Grazie.
Good morning. A little bit louder now. In the United States, we say good morning a little bit louder. Good morning. Can you all hear me fine? The volume is good? Great. Thank you. Well, just like I have been taking a journey the last couple days to get here and enjoyed just a little bit of Italy yesterday, I'm going to take you on a journey through a school that we built in the state of Florida. How many of you have ever been to Florida, USA? A few. So this is a school that was built back in 1996. And I'm going to take you on the journey of how did it get started? What does it do? Does it work? How does it want to change? What's the effect on kids? And then a little journey about what's it like to be a student, a teacher, a parent in our school, and I'll show you what a course might look like. So it's not like any school you have probably seen in Italy. It was very, very different, and it started back in 1996 when several educators and a few business people got together, received some money from the state, and they were told, create something new. Start from scratch. They put themselves in a room and they said, okay, we're supposed to create a school, and the only requirement was that they had to have distance education. That was the only thing they were told. Other than that, they can do whatever they want to. So before I tell you about the school, let me tell you who I am, so you at least know where I come from and what I do. I am actually more of a business person than an educator, but I have worked in the education field for over 35 years. I've worked for the company called IBM, and now I work for Florida Virtual School, and what I head up is their business side of how do we work with school districts across the United States and across the world in something we now call online learning. So my role is very unique in that I work with many, many, many different types of school organizations in trying to show them how they can use online learning in their classrooms, or for students who are at home, for students who might be in hospitals, for students who might be traveling around the world. How can you do this? And it's wonderful to see that this program has come so far and answers the needs of so many different types of students to help them learn. The lady who's in the middle picture here, her name is Julie Young. And Julie is the president and CEO of Florida Virtual School. It is the person that I report to. She was one of the original 8 people that started this program, that sat in that empty room and said, dream up something different. Dream up something that can apply to the children today that we aren't doing. Not to copy anybody else, to try something different. So we started this program called Florida Virtual School, and the first question we said is, okay, what's the school day going to be? So we thought about that, and we said, there shouldn't be a school day. If we're able to use distance education, why can't we let kids learn any hour of the day? Now, I don't know about students in Italy, but I know that high school students in the United States do not like to learn at 8 o'clock in the morning. They like to be asleep. So we have students... The what?
They sleep in the class.
They sleep in the class. That's very good. So we let our kids learn whenever they want to. If they want to learn at 9 o'clock in the morning, fine. If they want to learn at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, fine. If they want to learn at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's fine also. And I'll show you a chart later on that shows you when they're learning, because we actually chart when they're online, when are they taking their courses. And it's not at 8 o'clock in the morning. So the next thing we said was, okay, where's our building going to be? Well, if we're now going to use a classroom that's open 24 hours a day, do we really need a classroom? No, we don't. We actually don't have a school building. Our students take their courses from their homes. Some of them actually take it in the school building itself. Some of them take them in libraries. Some of them take them in restaurants. Some of them take them when they're on vacation and they're sailing or something like that. It doesn't matter. So we have actually over 1,500 employees in Florida Virtual School. Only 200 have an office. And that office building is in Orlando, Florida. That's the home of Disney World. And those are really the people that work in our HR, our information technology, our finance people, the people that keep school districts running. So we don't have a school. Of those 1,500 employees, over 1,200 of them are full-time, year-round teachers that work at home. So the next thing we talked about is, how do kids like to learn? You know, some kids like to go really fast. Some kids need more time. Some kids are visual learners. Some kids are more written word. Some kids need to experience things. I have 3 children, and they're all very different. One of them really likes to read. The other one doesn't like to read. So you have to figure out what's right for the child. So the other 2 things about our school is we look at the child and how they like to learn to help us set the path, and we like to know how long are they going to take the course. Most courses in the United States are a semester, about 18 weeks of instruction. That's what we call a semester. So we have a fall semester and a spring semester. Our courses, sometimes kids are taking them in 8 weeks. Sometimes they're taking them in 22 weeks. What's the right thing for the child? At the heart of this, though, is that we want the child to learn. So rather than trying to force all of this into one model, there's a lot of things that go on that are up to the student. And they tell us how they want to do this. And that results in a system that's very individualized for the student. So the teacher has a rather unique role here. And the teacher, by the way, is half of the reason we're successful. You have to have good courses, good content. But equally, you have to have good teaching. And our teaching is some of the best that goes on how we teach kids. But understand the teacher's job is not necessarily like your job is today. That teacher receives students every day. So that teacher might have 150 students who are all over the course. Some of them are in the beginning, some in the middle, some at the end. Now I also want to say, and it's very important you understand that, the model that I show you is what we use in the state of Florida. It's very different in Alabama. It's very different in Georgia. It's very different in Colorado. It's different all across the United States. Everyone comes up with their own model, and that's exactly what I would want for any program like this, whether it's a country or a state, to be customized to what that country or that state needs. So we actually have school districts now who use this program in traditional classrooms during the course of the school day. They don't use a textbook necessarily. They use this online program instead. So we've seen this come all in different directions, but again, it boils down to what's right for the student. But what I'm going to describe here and the data that I use will be things about how we do it in Florida, what we do in this particular school. Now, one of the things you might want to say is, how big is this school? It started very small. In 1997, we had 77 students. 77. That's all there was. Last year, we had 215,000 students in Florida alone. That's just the state of Florida. It's big, and it's growing. Every year, it grows by 25%. So this next year that we are going to have the data on, we'll have 50,000 more students. And the year after that, we'll have 60 or 70,000 more students. And there are programs now in the United States. There are certain states, and every state in the United States has their own set of rules. And several states are now requiring that every student take one course online during high school. They must take one online. Right now, that rule is not in Florida, but they just voted it in. So starting the year after next, every student in the state of Florida during their 4 years of high school must take one course online. So our school will go from 215,000 enrollments up to 500, 600,000 enrollments. Very, very busy, growing very, very fast. So it's been very successful. During the early years, we sort of had to figure out, what are we doing? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how do we change it? Interesting enough, today that still holds true. Every year we sit down and say, what do we do differently? What do we do next? And towards the end of the discussion, I'll tell you some of the things that we're going to try in the future and how they might work. In the state of Florida, we are officially a school district. So we are funded by the state. The students do not pay for our education. And we are a choice for kids. So we have public school students. We have something called homeschool students, which is very popular in the United States. There are 2 million homeschool students in the U.S., which means they don't go to a physical school building. They learn at home, and the teacher is their parent. So we have homeschool students too. And we have private school students all using us. But something that's a little bit different is, I don't know how it works in Italy, but in the United States, school districts receive their money a couple different ways. And they receive their money no matter what happens with the student. If the student fails, they get their money. If the student is successful, they get their money. Our school's a little different. We only get the money when the student has been successfully completed. So only when they pass the course do we then get money. And that makes things a little bit differently. And you might think, okay, that means they must be an easy school. Not the case at all. And I'll show you a little bit about that later on. So we actually asked for that. The state didn't tell us. We said we would like to have this accountability and show you how it can work. We're very, very proud of what we do in the sense that we create these courses, which are called content. So you'll see a list later on, and there's some brochures that look like this that would be floating around that list out the courses, but I'll show you them as well. But we're very, very pleased with the quality of the courses we create. So in the United States, they have a program called the Cody Awards. The Cody Awards are kind of like the Oscars of the film industry, but it's the Oscars of software development. We're the only school district who have ever gotten a Cody Award. And it's for some of the courses that we write and the quality of the work that we do. But we've been recognized by many, many organizations for not only the courses that we write, but how we teach our kids and what we do about our kids. And if someone had to say to me, who is Florida Virtual? I would say it's a learning organization. It's there to help kids. And the kids are at the heart of everything we try to do. So this is a map of the United States. Right? You probably have had to see it at some point in your education. So if you look at the bottom right-hand side, that part that sticks out, that's Florida. That's where I'm talking about. That's where we're located. And we're located right about in the middle of the state is where our one office is. But we have teachers who are all over the state. In fact, some of our teachers live in different states, all over the United States. We probably have employees in about 30 different states across the U.S. In fact, I don't live in Florida myself. I live in the state that's directly north of Florida called Georgia, in a city you might have heard of called Atlanta. And that's where I live. I travel a lot. In fact, I travel almost every single week. Last year, I was home for 4 weeks, and that's it. The rest of the time, I'm on the road someplace. Now, I don't travel every day. I am married, and I have to stay married, so I have to see my wife every so often. And I've been married for 36 years to the same person, so been married a long time. So we try to meet up on weekends, and I usually am traveling 3 or 4 days a week. Right? But we have students and clients who use our content in every single state in the United States, with the exception of one little tiny pain in my side up in the Northeast called Rhode Island. It's a little state, but I don't have any customers in Rhode Island. And I will this year, though. At some point, I will get that map entirely blue. But one thing to point out and remember is I'm talking about Florida. I'm not talking about how they do it in Colorado, how they do it in California, how they do it in New York. Everybody does it a little bit differently. We also have students taking our courses in 46 countries, including a few students in Italy. So we're all around the world. And yes, I do get to travel to some of those places. So I have been to France, I've been to Spain, I can now say I've been to Italy, I've been to China, I've been to Malaysia. I didn't like the food in Malaysia. I have been to Australia, New Zealand. Very interesting. And yes, sir. Excellent question. The question is, are those Americans taking our courses, or are they students in those countries? A little bit of both. We have U.S. citizens who do relocate abroad, and they can take our courses. But probably more than half of them are actually students in that country who've elected to pay us money to take those courses. Sometimes it's countries who work with us, like in Australia. We don't teach their students directly. They buy our content from us, and we teach them how to do it, and they do it themselves. The same thing is true in Canada. The same thing is true in an area of England, in Britain as well. So a little bit of both. This chart talks a little bit about, is this school an easy school? Is it a hard school? Is it a good use of what we would call taxpayer dollars, the money we get from the government? And a few years ago, back in 2006, an organization called the Florida Tax Watch Program, it's a group of citizens who were there to make sure the government is spending the money the right way. So they spent 1 year with us. They looked at our courses. They looked at how the students were doing. They talked to parents. They talked to our teachers. They wanted to find out, one, are they easy? And they found out that our school is actually tougher than a normal school in the state of Florida. We're harder. They call it more rigor. They also found out that kids have to do a lot more work in our courses than they do in the normal courses. Which, you know, kids are kids. They sign up for our course and they think, okay, this is an easy A. Not the case. So we do allow our kids to drop out of our program and return back to their normal school during the first 28 days of teaching. So if they discover this is a lot more than they want to do, then they can go back with no penalty. But those who stay, they're committed to do this. And about 85% of the students who stay pass our courses with a passing grade. And I'll show you what those numbers are in a little bit. The second thing is you see this thing called annual surveys. We never want to sit and rest that, okay, we're big, we're great, we do everything right. That's not us. So we forever ask parents, students, business community, how's our school doing? Legislators to us are the people who run the government. How are they thinking of us? So we do surveys all the time. And of all the surveys, the most important survey that we do is the student survey. And that's the survey that's asking the kids, what do they think of their course? And the most important question on the survey is, what did the teacher do? Was the teacher effective in how they taught you? That's one of the first things we look at. We want to make sure these teachers know what they're doing and they're doing it well. And why I'm thinking of that, we just don't say, okay, you're now a teacher in our school. You have to go through a lot of training. You have to learn the course, but you really have to learn how to do things differently because you're not in your normal school environment. Remember, you're not in a school building. So how do you manage your time? How do you work? What hours do you work? When do the kids want to talk to you? How do you talk to them? So we let all those things happen, and I'll show you a couple of slides later on that talk about what the teacher does during their day. So how are our kids doing? In the United States, most kids get a letter grade, A, B, C, D, or F. F is failing for us. D is passing for us. D is usually about a 60%. So you will see in this study, and this was done by that Tax Watch group, that kids who take our courses are generally getting higher grades than kids who are in traditional schools. You might say, well, why is that? Well, remember, they can take a little bit longer if they want to. They don't have a start date and a stop date of their school year. They can take longer during the day if they want to as well. But we do something else for kids too. You know, sometimes kids don't give you their best work. And when they don't give us their best work, we tell them to do it again. Or if they fail, we let them try it again. We want them to learn it. We want them to understand what they're learning. Remember, we think of ourselves as a learning organization. So tell me a little bit about these kids. So of 100,000 of these kids, 1/3 of them are coming to us because they're failing. They have failed the course or they're about to fail the course. Now, by the way, this is what the kids tell us. We don't have the data to really support this. We just know what they tell us. So that means they're coming to us for help. They need to learn in a different way. So we're a choice for them. So the hardest class for high school students to take in the U.S., there's two of them. One is algebra, algebra 1. The other is biology. That's the class that students take in 9th grade. So those students are about 14, 15 years old. And many of them fail. And that's across the entire United States. They just don't get it. So if you look at the students we take, we have 9,000 students in Florida taking Algebra 1. All but 150 of them are taking it as a repeat because they failed. And it's our job to get them back on track. This next data, this 25%, free and reduced lunch in the United States means that they're in the poverty level. So 25% of our kids are labeled as in the poverty level. They don't have enough money coming in according to U.S. standards. So we don't have just all the brain kids anymore. We have kids who are failing, and we don't have kids who have all the money. 25% of our kids don't have the money. These next two things called IEPs and LEPs, those are just U.S. words, don't worry about them. But it basically means those are kids have special education plans. For some reason, they need some extra help. So about 10% of our kids need special learning help.
They're wondering whether they are disabled people or...
The question is, are these disabled people? And actually, we do have a percentage of children who physically have handicaps that can take our courses from wherever they wish to be. But we were not written for those students. But we do work with those students. And all of our courses take into account sight problems, physical problems, hearing problems as well. And right now, we also have a group of kids that what we would call in the U.S., it's called homebound. And that means that a student is ill and might be in a hospital for a while or cannot come to school for a while. So since we follow the same things that go on in school classrooms, they might be in their classroom for a while, then they leave their classroom for the hospital and they take our courses. Then they go back to their classroom again. So they're in and out of our courses. And that works fine because it's the same curriculum. It's taught according to how Florida does things. In our state, these are all, again, Florida information, we have more white students than minority students, which is not quite the way it should be. We should have more minorities than white students, than Caucasian students in our state. We have more female students than we do male students, which is a surprise to me. I thought we would have more male students. We have students who are in cities, and then we have a large population that are outside the cities. And a lot of that is because some of these school districts, so a school district in the state of Florida is a geographical area. So it's a city with a surrounding area, and we call that a county. And there are 67 counties in the state of Florida. Each one of them is a school district. Some of them are large. The one that's down in Miami has 350,000 students. The one that's up in the north end has 5,000 students. So we have very big ones and we have very little ones and everything in between. You know, the smaller ones don't have quite the money. So we get their students because we offer courses that they cannot offer themselves. So we do a lot of that for rural. A typical student takes one course with us in the fall and one course with us in the spring. They take the rest of their courses usually at a regular school building. And some of them, again, take this course in their school building. But they don't take, very, very few students take us full time. There are some, and we do offer that. But most of them just take one or two courses from us. And in the United States, there's a program called Advanced Placement. So there's regular courses, then there's something called honors courses, a little bit tougher. And then if you want to take the course and get college credit, you can take one of 34 courses, and they're called Advanced Placement. So you get high school credit and you get college credit or university credit. So we offer some of those courses in advanced placement. And we do that with the approval of the university system in the United States. So if you look at those courses, those advanced placement, and those are generally your smartest kids in your school, because the courses are harder. You're taking a college course in high school. So you usually have really smart kids. But you know, sometimes kids who aren't so smart want to try it. And you have to be recommended to take that course. In our school, you don't. So 40% of the kids who take our AP courses would not be allowed to take them in their normal school building. And you know what? They love it. They're doing great. I'll show you some data on our AP kids. They're doing wonderful. So sometimes, you know, push those kids a little bit. They like it. In the state of Florida, there are tests that students must take every year. And those tests, we call them the high-stake tests. They're the state test. I think you have national exams in Italy. So these tests are very important. So it would be good to study how do kids do. Yeah, kids love them, right? And teachers love them. It would be great to know how do kids do that take the course from us versus how are they doing in their regular courses. So this graph is actually showing you that when a student is taking their course in the virtual program, they're doing better than they are doing in their regular classrooms. Now again, remember, we let kids take longer, but by the way, these tests are all given the same day, regardless of where the student is. So the student has to take it the same day. But they seem to be learning more. They seem to be learning better. It seems to be doing the trick. If I were you and I were looking at this chart, everyone wants to know what happens in grade 10 and why are those numbers so low. The test is a totally different test that year. Everything changes. It goes from a multiple choice test to a written test. Kids really struggle with it. They have a hard time getting used to a different type of test. But we still are doing better, but only a third of the kids in regular classes are passing that. So that's not a good statement. So every year, in order to get advanced placement credit, remember those are the courses that you get college credit, you must take a test in the month of May, and you have a 5-point scale. You must get a 3, 4, or 5 to get college credit. If you get a 1 or 2, you don't get the college credit. You still pass the course, but you don't get the college credit. So every year, it's very important for us to learn how are our kids doing. So this graph shows you how kids are doing in Florida Virtual School, how they're doing, bless you, how they're doing in traditional schools, and how are they doing in just Florida. So the blue chart shows how they're doing in Florida Virtual. The red one shows you how they're doing in the nation. The green one shows you how they're doing in Florida. Florida, not so good. The blue one really bothered us because we have always been better. This is the very first year that we did not outscore the national average in AP. That meant something's not working. What did we do wrong? So we had to find out. So a couple things we found out. First of all, one of our courses, a course called AP Art History, was not doing well. It particularly was bad. And we found out that the test had changed, where they focused a lot more on modern art than classical art. Our course was written for classical art. So we weren't teaching them what they were being tested on. So what can you do in an online? Rewrite the course. Change it. Make some additions to it so it's meeting the needs of the students. So we did that. The second thing is that schools do not necessarily require students to take this test. Okay? And sometimes in the United States, in fact, many times, kids take AP classes because their transcript, what goes to college, what goes to university to enter into university, to get into the school, Schools will see AP courses and go, oh, these are good kids. I want these. So all they're doing is getting that AP by the course. They don't have to pass the course. They just have to have that AP by it. So we have a number of students in our program who elect not to take the course because they have been accepted to the university. The university just wants them to pass the course, but they don't care about the test. In fact, the university likes them to take it again in the university. Remember, that's one of their courses. So that this year, we made every student take the test, whether they wanted to or not. They were not very happy with us. So they rebelled a little bit, but that's okay. The last thing we found out is, remember, every student takes this test in May. Well, remember, our school is open all year long. We had students who were starting the course in January. They weren't finishing the course. When you don't finish the course, it's pretty hard to pass the test. So we now tell students, if you're starting in January, remember, this test is in May. And you didn't take it in September, October, November, and December. So you might be behind. So we made some changes. And so the next year, notice, we're the blue. We're higher again, so we feel better. But you know what? We don't sit and rest. We actually look at it by every individual course. And we actually make adjustments in every course because we have some courses that are really, really, really doing well. We have others that are not doing as well. So rewrite the courses. This is the chart, and the numbers are not as important as the colors. This is when kids are learning in our school. Now, this was taken a couple years ago, but it's still close. The darker the red, so look at the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m., that's when kids are online. The darker the green, the fewer the kids. Now notice, they like to learn on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They don't like to learn so much on Fridays. They don't like to necessarily learn that much on Saturdays and Sundays, but some kids do. Some of them like to learn at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's okay. So this is important because we look to see when kids are learning, so then we adjust our support. So our teachers are available to kids 7 days a week, 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. Now, that doesn't mean they work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That means that kids know that teachers are working some point during that day. So we have many teachers who set their own schedule. They like working this way. So, maybe they have their own children and they get their children off to school. So maybe they start to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and they work maybe until noon. Then maybe they take a couple hours off and they start working again until maybe from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Then their kids are home, so they spend time with their own family from maybe 4 to 7. Then they go back to work again from 7 to 10. They can do that if they want to. And I'll show you what they're doing during that time. They do not have to work just 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock. You like that? Now, understand this, though. Our teachers are not sitting home eating chocolates in bed. They're working very, very hard. They have a lot to do. But understand this. About 97% of our teachers stay with us. They like what they're doing. And I'll show you why in just a bit. So, why do students take these courses in the United States? One, it's a choice. We have built a new generation of kids that are not like the kids that we have today. They want options. You and I, most of you, maybe some of you learned how I did. All right? So I learned many, many, many years ago. So I actually have grandchildren. I'm in that stage in my life. And I learned in a classroom sitting in rows just like we are today. Kids don't do that. They like to learn different ways. Some kids need a flexible schedule because maybe they have, maybe they're trying to be an athlete, so they need to work in the afternoon on their sports, and they need to be in school at different hours. So they need schedules that are flexible for them. Some of them do this to get ready for college Because in the United States, you really cannot take a college or university experience without taking at least one online course. Every student at least takes one in the United States. Sometimes it's using your buildings and your resources better. Keep in mind, I don't have school buses. I don't have cafeterias. I don't have cafeteria workers. I don't have custodians. I don't have all those jobs. So I actually am a little bit cheaper than a regular school building. And we actually save the state of Florida money every year in teaching this way. But remember, who's the most important person in our school? The teacher. Most important to us. In the United States, there are certain areas that are growing rapidly. I live in one of those areas. They cannot build schools fast enough. So if you can use a school building that has a capacity for 2,000 students, but now you can raise the capacity to 2,500 students by using virtual courses, you're going to save some money that way. Some students take us because they need to learn it again. They have failed. That's what credit recovery, learning recovery, that's what that means. Some students, we don't want them in our school building. They've broken rules. I am sure there are students who have had troubles in Italy just like there are in the United States. So we're a choice for those school districts. And sometimes you flat out just don't want them in the building for whatever reason it is. We have some students who learn at home, the homeschool population. We have the financial affordability. We are sometimes the way that we prevent kids from dropping out. We have a huge problem in the United States of kids dropping out of high school. We have saved many thousands of students from dropping out because we're giving them a different way of learning. And you know what? The way they're learning in here is the way they're going to go into the business world and many times the jobs they have. You work with people, I work with people all over the world. All right? I have to learn how to work with those students and how do I work with those companies that I work with in school districts. So I have to have that skill of how do you do this. So what happens to the student? What's a student do in our school? First thing is everything's through our website. So all of our courses are on our website, and there should be some of my business cards floating around, and I do have the website listed on the back, so you can go in and learn a little bit about what our school looks like. But they go into our website. In the United States, websites are very, very popular. Okay? Everybody has a website. Kids have their own websites. So they go into our school, and the first thing they have to do is get admitted to the school. They have to prove that they're a student in Florida, whether they're a homeschool student, a private school student, or a public school student. They have to register. They have to admit to the school. Then they can register for a course. So they might say, I want to take these 3 courses, or I want to take this 1 course, or they might say, I want to take these 12 courses. So what happens is if they're in a regular school, someone has to say yes. So those students who try to take 12 courses, no, you don't do that. Okay? Why would you want to take 12 courses at one time? So we do have some protection built in to make sure it's the right thing for the student as well. So now they've registered for the course, they've been accepted, they are assigned a teacher, and they're told their teacher's names. They don't meet this teacher. They talk to this teacher, they might text this teacher, they might email the teacher, but they typically don't see the teacher. Now we do have events around the state of Florida where our teachers go and represent us, and they might go there and meet some of the teachers. So sometimes they do meet them, but it's not through the normal course of a day. Now, some of them use Skype so they can physically see it. They all can see a picture of the teacher, so they know what they're looking like, right? So the first thing that happens is the teacher calls the student and introduces him or her. We have men teachers and we have women teachers. And they ask the student, have you ever done this before? And if the student has, then they refresh their memory of what they're about to do. If they haven't, they talk a little bit more in detail about what they're doing. And they talk about how the system is set up and how the courses work. And the course in particular that they're taking, they'll get them started on that. So they get them going in there. We call that the welcome call. And by the way, you know, after we talk to the students, guess what the teachers do next? They talk to the parents. They tell the parent what the student is going through. And we actually require the teacher to talk to every parent every month. We do require the teacher to talk to the student every week. So we don't let these students just drift. We know what's going on. Some people want to know if there's very much student interaction from student to student. Not as much as you would in your regular classrooms, but there is some. Sometimes they work on group projects together. Sometimes there's a group of kids who are stuck at the same point. So the teacher gets them all together and they interact with each other. So there are times when the teachers and the students interact as a group, but not that much. But it can happen. Sometimes the student goes, I don't get this. So what do you think they do? They call their teacher. Most of the time on the phone. They all have cell phones. And you know what? That teacher might be answering the phone while they're shopping at the mall or at the grocery store or someplace else. It doesn't matter. They could be sitting on the beach. Okay? They talk to their students on the phone. So they get help. We also have online tutoring. So they can actually key in their question, and there's a service that we use that can give them instant answers if they want to, and that's 24 hours a day. They might be working on their assignments or their projects, and they have regular assignments. They have a pace. So one of the first things you ask a student is, how long are you going to take this course? So some students will say, I'm going to take it for 4 months. So the teacher says, well, then you need to work on it this much every day, okay, or this much every week. Sometimes what happens, and it happened again this year, the month of March is what I call the panic month. It's when the students find out who are graduating seniors aren't going to graduate. So they call our school and they say, can I take this course in 8 weeks so I can graduate? And it's usually the parents who are calling us, okay, because their little child is not on target. So it's interesting to see what happens. About 20,000 students enter our school every March just so they can graduate. Okay? Now the other thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having a conversation at some point with my teacher. And those conversations are really important. Because, you know, you don't see that student every day. You don't see them physically. So sometimes you don't know if they're getting it. So we have a lot of what we call discussion-based assessments for those students. And so I'll be talking to my teacher. And what I don't know is that my teacher is actually testing me right now to see how I'm doing. You know, I see you got this problem right on your test. Why don't you tell me how you did that? Okay, so you're learning to see if the student is understanding that. And by the way, I as a teacher am also learning whether it's that student who's really taking those tests or not. Because you know what? Cheating can happen. And kids are kids. They're going to figure out what they're going to do. So these discussion-based assessments are very important. Now, I might be taking a test for the end of my course. Florida is implementing tests for the end of every major course. So I might be getting ready for that. After I finish the course, the credit for my class that I've passed gets sent to their school, and that school still owns that child. But I, as a student, by the way, also can participate in clubs. I actually had a virtual prom, which is a big dance. We actually had a Shakespeare festival virtually. We have experiences. We had one this year where kids could learn about how other kids learned around the country. So I was one of the speakers, and I was telling them how kids learn in China, how kids learn in India. So you get to learn those things. So that's what a typical student is doing during the day. Now, what about the teacher? You know, I don't know about your schools, but in our schools, teachers have a lot of other things they get to do. They get to go to the cafeteria to make sure the kids are behaving. They get to monitor the buses to make sure the kids are getting on there. They get to do school activities after school. They might be sponsoring a sport and have practice for their students. They have a lot of other things to do. I know my oldest child's a teacher. She's an 8th grade language arts teacher in a public school in Georgia. She spends about 28 days of her school year, that's 28 days out of 180, getting kids ready for tests. None of those things take place with our teachers. They spend 80% of their times on the students. The rest of the time, they're doing things that teachers have to do. They have meetings, they have professional development, they get ready for things themselves, but they spend 80% of their time with kids, helping the kids learn. Now, they also have this thing called a dashboard. So imagine I have a big giant list of all my kids, and on that list, it's showing who's turning their work in. So all the kids are either green, yellow, or red. The green kids mean that they've been turning their work in on time because everything is measured. Everything that the student does and everything that the teacher and the student does is measured and logged. So all the ones in green are on track. The ones in yellow, caution, might have some problems. The ones in red are falling behind. So I, as a teacher, I'm going to look to see who's in red and try to get a hold of those students to see what help they need. Remember, I must talk to the student at least once a week. And there's some students who really only want to be talked to once a week. And then there's those students who want to talk to you every day. And that's okay. You sort of figure this out on how they work together. So I'm going to look at my dashboard, and I'm going to see who's doing well. I'm going to look to see what I have to grade. I have to grade all work. Some work is auto-graded, but much of it is graded by me. Sometimes I'm going to look to see if I'm worried about any kids who might be cheating. That's what I mean by academic integrity. So I even have the power that if I don't trust that child, I can make them go to a school building and take a test in front of someone. I can do that. I'm going to make calls to kids, see how they're doing. And by the way, you learn all sorts of things about these kids. You learn not only about what they're doing from their classes, but you learn about their lives. And it's important that you know about their lives, because that helps you understand if you're talking to that student or not, or if you're talking to their brother, or if you're talking to their friend. Okay? You got to know those things. I'm going to work with some kids who are struggling. I'm going to be calling some parents. I have about 150 kids, so I'm probably going to be making 30 phone calls every week to my parents. And yes, you live with a headset on your head a lot. All right? In fact, teachers get gifts from their husbands or their spouses, and sometimes they get excited because it's a headset. All right? So they don't have to work on things. I'm going to probably have some meetings to go to. Our school is organized according to subjects. So those kids who are those students, teachers who are teaching all math, they're all in one school and they have one leader. Those who are teaching English are in one school, so they have a leader there. So I probably have some meetings. I probably have something I'm going to take, so I call that professional development. I can take that online. We offer over 900 hours of professional development a year, and once every year we get all of our teachers together in one space. Now that space is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so it has to hold all employees, 1,500. And they learn new things, new ways of doing things, new courses that we have. They get to find out some technology things, so if we're doing things differently, they see that. So we do that professional development. I also, as a teacher, might be going out to an event representing my school, representing Florida Virtual School. So I might be going to shrimp festivals or book fairs or sporting events, and I go and represent us. And remember this, my number one job is the last bullet, focus on learning, but also recognize that we strongly believe it's a combination of good teaching and good content that makes the perfect student, a perfect environment for them. So now, what are we doing differently? What are we going to try to do? So we're trying to do things out of the box. We don't like to just think, okay, we're there, we've done it, we know how to do everything. We want to figure out what's best for kids. So one of the things that we're learning is, okay, we're very individualized, meaning that our courses and our teaching is very much one-on-one with students. But can you do more than that? What about if you actually made the course tailor-made to that kid, to that student? So it's customized for them. So what we're building is this. The first thing we have is something called an LMS. That's called a learning management system. That's where your courses sit. They sit in this big thing called a learning management system. Some of you might have heard of a product called Blackboard. That's a learning management system. It's where courses sit. And you know Blackboard. You use Blackboard. So that's actually what we use. So we have our learning management system. Then we put our content and we take it and we put it in smaller chunks. We call that a learning object. So think of a learning object maybe as a lesson. So we have all of our courses in lessons, and they're sitting in this big, giant cloud in some computer. And this cloud has other things in it too. Not only our courses, but it might have some other products that we really like in there. So there's all sorts of digital content these days that are available out there. You might use some in your classroom. Different products that come from different companies. We can load that up in there too. So what we're building is this system where the student goes in and we do a couple things with them first. First, how do they like to learn? Are they visual learners? Are they written learners? How do they like to learn? The second thing is, what do they know about this topic already? What have they mastered? So taking that together, you can go and then pull the right learning objects and make a course that's designed for that child. Now, that means that teacher needs to know a lot of learning objects, and that's okay. They're ready for that. But that course means it's made for that child. So it's not only individualized the way we do it today, it's actually customized for them. And that's what we're building right now. We also add to our courses. Every year we come out with 10 or 12 new courses. We add new AP courses. Those are those college credit courses. We learn how to deal with kids that are failing. We learn how do you bring this kind of teaching into classrooms. In the United States, they call that blended learning. How do you blend this online environment with this classroom environment? So we're working on that as well. And then, I think a lot of kids have cell phones. In Italy, do they have cell phones? Probably more than anything else. So how do we do some things with these cell phones? And then lastly, we asked ourselves a question. Kids like video games. Do Italian kids like video games? Yes. So U.S. kids love video games. So we actually developed 2 courses that are video games. And it's actually a course. One is in U.S. history, and one is for struggling readers. And I don't have it with me here, but if you go to our website, you can actually see a little trailer, and you can actually get tours of all of our courses and see how it works. But it's a video game. They go in, they have a mission, they have to solve a problem, and the problem in the history game is that someone's trying to change U.S. history. And they have powers, and they have to figure out who's changing it, what they've changed, and how do I change it back. And interesting, guess what happens? They happen to learn U.S. history at the same time. Now, that's not for every student, but a number of kids like to learn that way. So in Florida, a student can learn in their classroom, they can learn at their home, they can learn in a virtual course that looks like their regular course, or they might be able to take a game version of that course. It's all about choices. The last thing that you see in red is that some of you might have heard of a company called Pearson. Pearson is a publishing company, a very big company in education, and we actually work a lot with them now as well. And the reason we work a lot with them is they have a lot of digital assets already. Rather than making them up from scratch ourselves, why not use what someone else has? So we partner strategically with Pearson as well. Now, we do work with other publishers as well, but Pearson's probably our biggest one. Now, how do you make these courses? You just don't throw it together. You actually have to go through a series of steps. That's what's important on this slide, is there's an organized approach on how to develop a course. So you first of all want to look at the requirements of the course. You want to look at what resources do you have, and then how do you want to teach it? What order do you want to teach this in? And then you put together a rough draft of the course. You test it out a little bit. see if kids like it, and you develop then the individual modules that go with it, and you now put it into production, and then you got to change it because sometimes things don't work the way you want it to work, and then you redo it again. Every 3 to 5 years, every course is rewritten. But you can do that with technology. It's a little easier than rewriting the textbook. So look at your requirements, your resources, how you want to teach it, what the design is going to be, the modules that you have, test it, put it live, refine it, do it again, over and over again. We have over 120 courses that we teach in Florida. Outside of Florida, we have about 100. We also use a lot of different pedagogy, so a lot of different educational items. I should tell you this, that 99.9% of the people who work in Florida Virtual School are educators. That's what their degree is in. They're education people. So they take all these education models and they put them all together and figure out what's the best way for kids to learn. So what's the pedagogy? We look at a symphony of skills, of things that get to kids, what excites kids. And you will see in the beginning of our courses, we not only say this is what you're going to learn, we're going to tell you why you're going to learn it, and we're going to apply it to real life. So they actually understand why they're doing this. So what are these courses? There's a couple of catalogs floating around like this that list out the courses. But in high school, I listed up here things like business technology, web design, computing for colleges and careers, computer programming, very popular. Languages, not Italian yet, but we do have Chinese, we have Latin, we have Spanish, we'll have French next, then probably German. So we'll have several languages, and there's different levels. There's Chinese 1, Chinese 2, Chinese 3. We have PE courses. PE for us is physical education. It's when they're doing something outside physically. What do they call it in Italy? PE?
Physics. No, not physics. Educazione amatoriale. See, but I don't know how to translate that. Education on how to move, that would be the literal translation.
How to move. Okay, how to move.
Literal translation. Okay.
PE is one of our most popular courses, believe it or not, in Florida. And you might say, really? Why? Well, do you know that young girls don't like to get hot and sweaty when they're in school? They like to look nice. So we offer them to take PE at home. And you know what's funny is that the state did not like that. They said, what do you mean PE? What do you mean you have so many students in PE? So we were going to cancel the program. And then we received all these letters from parents when we told them we were canceling it. Not only is the PE program being good for the student at home, because some kids are embarrassed by their bodies in the U.S. We're the oversized world, okay? But they found that their families were changing. They were actually making their families go for walks. They were changing their eating styles. And so the families were losing weight. So the state said, no, keep it. Your parents love it. We have language arts. That's English to us, English 1, 2, 3, and 4. So English 1 is typically 9th grade for us, which are students about 14 or 15. 2 is 15, 16-year-olds. 3 is 16, 17-year-olds. And 4 is senior year, last year of high school before they go on. In math, we teach pretty much all the math courses that are taught to students. So we have Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, Calculus, Geometry. We also have honors versions of each of these classes, which is a little bit harder. And then we have AP courses where they're applicable. So there's lots of different forms. Science, things that you see, biology, chemistry, earth space sciences, marine, physical science, physics as well. Social studies, things that kids have to take in the United States, American history. In Florida, you have to take Florida history. World history is something else. Then we have courses that are like study skills. How do you study better? We talked about AP courses. But then in the United States, kids are allowed to take electives. They must take 4 courses in math during high school, 4 courses in language arts, 4 courses in science, and 4 courses in social studies. But then they must take other courses. So they can take languages, they can take these electives as well. And electives are very popular. People like to take them. And what happens in school districts is they can't afford some of these courses, so they like to have these courses virtually instead. We offer middle school courses as well. Again, the same core subjects such as language arts, mathematics, science, social studies. We do PE again. They like that PE. But then we do art as well. And we do keyboarding, how to learn keyboarding. And we do study skills. Middle schoolers, and middle school for us is typically 11, 12, 13-year-olds going into 14-year-olds. About the same there. They need a lot of help. You know, they're going through a lot of things in their bodies, and tough kids to teach. So we offer them a lot of choices there. We don't do very much in the primary years yet. We're just now starting that area, but we do offer PE because the schools ask us to do that. And then many kids who are 9 and 10-year-olds are taking our courses that are in middle school for advanced kids as well. So here's what a course might look like. This is the screen of the first part of the course. And it's organized in modules. Module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in this case. They might have 10 modules. Every module has a theme. So module 1 here is motion. And the courses will vary in looks. So this is physical science. The one for earth science is going to look a little bit different. You don't want them to look the same. You want them to be different, so kids are entertained a little bit with a different look and feel. But the first thing that will happen is in the course, they're going to get some sort of an introduction. That introduction could be something they read, or it could be this figure talking to them. So it could be someone who will talk to them about what they're going to go through. And there they will start talking about what they are going to learn about. And then you will see they will learn the objectives of the course, and then they will learn why they're going to learn it. So let me back up. Oops, this doesn't work, sorry. Can't go backwards, so we'll just stay this way. So you learn, first of all, what you're going to learn. Then you're going to learn why you're going to learn it. And then you're going to learn why do you learn that? What does that mean? You know, kids wonder, why on earth am I learning this? So we try to put it into a practical application. This is why we want you to learn it. So the courses are colorful, they're lively, they have animation in there, but remember, there's a teacher, and that teacher can go with them at any time. We use something called Illuminate. Think of it like a big giant whiteboard or blackboard where the student can go in and the teacher can go in and they can work on problems together. So they're given a lot of resources. Okay? And again, students might collaborate as well. And they might do an experiment online. We have little labs where they actually, are looking at test tubes and things like this, that they measure the test tube, they tell it to fill it up, and there's actually a hand that comes over, fills it up. So there's animation built into it as well. It's the test tube one. And then during the courses, we talked about how they have assessments with teachers called discussion-based assessments, DBAs we call them. And so there's going to be times when they're going to be online with their teacher. They could do it through Skype. They do it typically verbally. They don't see them that much, and they're ready to go. So courses are colorful. They're entertaining. They look differently for them. It's built with kids in mind. All of our courses are obviously viewed by teachers, and teachers are constantly sending in suggestions So that's a very important component to what we have. So that is who Florida Virtual is. So we've learned that it's a very unique school. However, in the United States, there are now 27 schools like this throughout the United States. So different schools, different states have state schools, but we're the biggest one. So North Carolina has one. They're about a fourth of our size. That's the second largest. Alabama has one, and they have about 30,000 students. So we've learned that this program runs one way in Florida, but you can run it different ways in different states and different countries. We've learned what we try to do with students and how we work with them and what's it like a little bit to be a teacher. We took a very short glimpse into what a course looks like, but again, you can look at a course on our website at any time you'd like to, and you can see exactly how these courses learn. And our website is right there, www.flvs.net, and you can get tours of courses. But we've learned that we've made this program up for kids. So what I'd like to do is entertain any questions that you might have. No.
Ok, no, attenta però, è meglio lo facciamo noi. Lo facciamo noi perché è troppo vicino.
No, we translate the question.
Chiudi
You
la...
translate? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, because
Okay, questions, they will translate for me.
Allora, adesso possiamo avere sia delle domande, dei commenti, diciamo per tenere la cosa fluida chiederei interventi brevi o domande brevi, cioè non in modo che tutti possano dire la loro. Domande, chiarimenti, commenti o qualsiasi cosa, prego. Abbiamo un microfono lì, così tutti sentono, c'è uno lì. Magari identificatevi così sappiamo professionalmente, cioè in modo che anche per noi sappiamo chi parla.
Allora, saluto il professore e volevo dire, io sono un insegnante di scuola media inferiore di Napoli. Volevo chiedere una cosa, anche se ho visto le ultime slide, in effetti ho avuto già forse una risposta a questa domanda. Essendoci corsi anche di natura, diciamo, fortemente pratica, vedevo per esempio come biologia, chimica o altre materie simili, mi restava un po' un dubbio per quanto riguarda le attività laboratoriali, quindi il fare, quindi vedevo che ci sono delle simulazioni, mi sembrano anche fatte bene, però forse questa componente, chiaramente come avete risolto questo problema, che è un problema abbastanza importante per queste discipline che hanno bisogno di molta pratica.
Excellent question.
ok, lei dovrebbe tradurre la risposta però. Ok.
Okay, so excellent question. For labs in sciences, we do a couple different things. First of all, we make what we call lab kits. Now, these are going to have harmless elements in there that we actually mail to the students to their homes so they can conduct experiments. Because you're right, the sciences require experiments. So we do those experiments, we send them kits, we call them lab kits where they can do things. We also have what we call home kits. Sometimes we tell them to go to the store and buy baking soda and things like that so they can do kitchen labs is what we call them as well. Some experiments are much more sensitive, you know, and a lot more, they require supervision. They require gas, electricity, and so forth. So we do a couple different things there. We can require the students to come to a traditional school building to do the lab in person if we want to. But there's also technology out there where you actually are going to do a lab online and there's robots that you're controlling that are doing the actual lab and you're watching them do it online. Those are the very sophisticated labs that we have, and we've just started working with them. They're very expensive because of the technology that's used, but that will become less expensive over time. But it's very, very cool, and the kids love doing that. So I think about my wife recently had sudden surgery, emergency surgery. And they had to go in and actually remove a very large cyst, that big, okay, on her liver. And the doctor was in a different room than she was because they did it all laparoscopically. He was not in the same room as my wife, and that's how they took it out. So we let them, they do something like that, but you're across the country instead. The labs are in the California coast is where we found them. Yeah, very cool.
Buongiorno, io insegno musica in una scuola media. Ho visto che fra i vostri corsi non c'è musica come materia. Allora chiedevo perché e chiedevo se i corsi che voi fate all'estero sono tutti in inglese, quindi anche quelli che voi fate in Italia sono tutti in lingua inglese. Grazie.
Okay. All right, you are correct. There are no music courses in our program. However, we are about to enter into a partnership, I think, with the Juilliard School in New York City to create programs for the arts. We will do the actual creation of the content. They will be the experts. And I think music is going to be one of the first things that happened. And I did not bring it with me, but there is a composer, his name is Whitaker in the United States, who recently actually created a virtual choir. And you can actually search for it online called Virtual Choir, and you will see this choir that he created. It had 200 students that never met each other. And they sent individually in their work, and then he put it all together. He just did another one with over 2,000 kids singing in it. It's beautiful. It's just gorgeous. I'm trying to get a copy of it so I can show people, because it's amazing what he's done. So in the United States also, because of money, elementary schools are doing away with music programs, which is horrible. So they're looking to see how they can do it virtually instead. So it's very much a need. So stay tuned. I'll have some music.
Per quanto riguarda la traduzione, commento io. Chi di voi sarà interessato un domani a fare questi corsi in inglese?
Oh, English.
In inglese.
Forgot
Noi
that.
stiamo studiando una partnership con la Florida Virtual School, con il consenso del Ministero, per consentire un accesso controllato, monitorato, aiutato agli insegnanti in inglese, con ovviamente un triplo obiettivo: familiarizzarsi con la tecnica online, familiarizzarsi con l'inglese in una situazione vera, cioè non finta ma vera, perché a quel punto non sta facendo un corso in inglese. Terzo, consentire all'insegnante poi un domani di usare l'inglese nella sua didattica, diciamo, naturalmente. Quindi stiamo studiando con la Florida Virtual School e, diciamo, possibilmente con l'aiuto in accordo col Ministero, come utilizzare questi corsi online come un grimaldello per forzare la situazione dell'inglese a scuola in una situazione realistica in cui l'insegnante prima è allievo e poi è docente di un corso in inglese, che credo che sia il modo più naturale, cioè non inglese fuori dalla didattica, ma inglese nella didattica e per la didattica. Tra l'altro è interessante, ovviamente, come voi insegnanti, vivere come allievo un corso online, cioè uno capisce veramente come funziona vivendolo, non leggendolo. Purtroppo credo che questo sia un problema, devo dire, per tutte le tecnologie, e voi lo sapete dal DOL. Cioè, quando la tecnologia della didattica era la stessa che uno aveva avuto a scuola, un insegnante aveva un grosso feeling personale, cioè l'aveva vissuta la cosa, sapeva come funzionava. Quando si è creata questa frattura, il problema è che molti di voi sono costretti a usare una tecnologia e un metodo che loro non hanno vissuto. per cui questo crea una frattura. E il fatto di avere, secondo me, recuperare l'online learning come allievi è molto utile per poi riproporlo o riviverlo. E quindi credo che non vadano tradotti in parole povere, credo che sia bene che restino in inglese. E vi arriverà un'offerta nel futuro, spero, per partecipare.
Buongiorno, sono il professore Prisco, insegno matematica in un liceo scientifico. Vorrei sapere come fate per accertarvi che gli elaborati siano effettivamente degli allievi e soprattutto come vi regolate nei test finali, negli esami finali. Grazie.
First of all, I also want to answer the question. Our courses are only in English right now. We have been asked to translate those courses, but primarily the first one was Spanish, that they would like Spanish versions of the courses. It's all about how much resource you have and how fast you can translate things. And we're actually looking at some technology that will help with translation. We love technology, obviously. So from an academic integrity standpoint, how do you know it's those kids? All right, very, very valid question. And understand in the United States, that question is consistently asked because there have been many instances where cheating has been exposed. There were some situations where major university football teams, now that's U.S. football, not Italian football, were caught cheating because they were taking their courses online. They would send a friend to take the course, okay? So a lot of our courses, because of that individual component, you're getting to know that child. You're getting to know facts about that child, and the child doesn't know why. So you get to find out, what does their parents do? What does their dad do? Where do they go on vacations? What's the name of the family dog? What are their personal interests? You're finding out stuff with them. And so a lot of the tests that we take are verbal tests, okay? And you're going to throw in during the test, oh, so tell me, how's your dog Fido, okay? And if they don't know the answer, or, what was your dog's name again? You quiz them a little bit. You just throw in things that they would have to know. Now, you still, funny story, you still sometimes get caught. We had one student who met the parents, one teacher who met the parents of a student. And the teacher complimented the student's performance on their last test that they had taken on Tuesday evening. And the parent said, well, how did they take a test on Tuesday evening? Because I was with them, all right? And the teacher said, well, that's funny because I, asked him about the family, asked him things. They knew everything about your family. And he goes, I bet you that was his brother. And indeed it was. So what does that student have to do from now on to take a test? They must go to a school building and take a test in front of a person. And we can require that at any time. That's part of the deal. So we can do that. The other thing we do is if the test, especially in math, if they've taken a test they did well, we're going to ask them how they got to some of those answers. So tell me how you did that problem. What did you do? Because you're going to quickly know whether it was that student or not if they can't answer those questions. So it's really very, very important. Now, one of the measurements that I'll tell you about this cheating that's happened is in the United States, there's an organization that supervises athletics. And athletics in the United States are very big. College athletics. Everybody wants to play football. U.S. football. And this group is called the NCAA, National Collegiate Athletic Association. They will not recognize online programs as credits for students to take unless they took a Florida virtual one. If the child took our course, they'll accept it. But if they take some of the others, they won't accept them.
Let me ask an additional question on this because I think it's important. Honestly, do you think you really have solved the problem, or you are fighting? You have to improve your assessment quality, or you think you really have solved the problem? You are 100% confident of.
We will never solve the problem. We will always look for the next thing. We can tell you now, students can go out on the internet and find an answer to every single one of our assessment questions. All right, they're all out there. So it is a forever going on situation. I think we know what we're doing. I think we know how to do it. I know we know how to do it, but it's always going to be there. You know, my favorite statement, kids are kids. Very creative.
But also in normal schools.
Yeah, it's normal. They're normal. Yeah.
Okay, so I have two questions. First, you talk about personalization and customization to the students. Do you customize contents too, or only activities and interaction of the teacher with the students? And the second question is related to the first one, in the sense, at which point during, apart from the moment that you said, discussion and tests and so on, and call on when you need the help, when this interaction between teachers and students take place, do you have a kind of interaction plan beside the conventional one that you mentioned? So while students teach the material, do you have any other kind of interaction beside calling the teacher where they don't understand something?
The first question is, our content stands as it is today. It is not customized for students. It is the customization, the personalization comes from the teacher helping them. As we develop more of our content in these smaller learning objects, more customization is capable of taking place. You can have different models. And it's really important to understand in the United States, we set up what we call standards. Standards are what we want the child to learn. Yeah, the standards. The standards, they're coming up with a national standard called Common Core, which is used around the country, but every state may deviate from those 15%. So they can still require something different. So every state is a little bit different. Making a course that works in every state is it's almost impossible. So by having them in smaller objects, I can make a special object just for Texas, a special one for Connecticut, and assemble that into the course for them. So it makes our life much easier to take place. And it happens to be the best thing to do for kids, too, which is a nice thing to happen. But in the United States, there will never be a full agreement on everything, because a state can even say, I'm not going to use the national standards. So Texas, you have to understand, people in Texas, they think that the entire United States should be Texas. They should be their own country. All right? So they pride themselves on not accepting anything from the federal government. So they refuse to accept the national standards because they're Texas. Okay? They have all the oil too. So they have they have a lot of money. The second thing is teachers. These assessments with the kids are all scheduled between the teacher and the student. So they ask when do they want to do them. Generally, they're between 8 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night. There can be exceptions, but that's up to the teacher and the student. But they are always scheduled. Now, the teacher can call the student anytime they want to. All right? And I'm sure that the students have their teacher ID in their phone, so they know if it's the teacher or not, whether they're going to answer it as well. And trust me, the teachers also put their student IDs on their phone, so they know, okay, it's Betty who's calling. I don't really want to talk to Betty right now, but they don't do that too much. So schedule is really based upon students and their availability. We keep in mind these students, most of them are in their regular school buildings during the day, so a lot of the activities are from 4 o'clock on in the evenings.
Excuse me, at the course tracked and put in the record, I mean, that they was speaking with whom, is this recorded? Not the call, say,
Yep.
but the fact that there was a call.
Everything that the student and teacher do together is recorded. So every phone call I make to the student is recorded and logged. And the reason for that is that I, as a teacher, have a supervisor. All right? So just like the teacher can, I can never not talk with my hands. Just like the teacher looks to see how the students are doing, the teacher's supervisor looks to see how the teacher is doing, and they have their own dashboard. So they have teachers who are in red, which means that something's not working well. They're either not calling the parents or they're not calling something. They have teachers who are in yellow. They have teachers who are in green. So just like any other school organization, you're going to focus those who are in red. They might be your new teachers, because, you know, teaching online is just like teaching all over again year one. It's like your first year of teaching. It's a different way of doing things. So we don't just leave those teachers out there saying, okay, you're online, good luck. No, they have all the support and help and training to make them effective in their teaching. And you know what? Sometimes these teachers don't make it. They are great teachers, but this environment's not right for them. Sometimes our teachers really want their summers back, especially if they have young families. That's okay. What happens is those teachers generally go back to their classrooms, and 100% of them tell us they're now better teachers, which is great. They've learned different ways of dealing with kids. And so we don't hold that against them. Sometimes it's not quite right, but sometimes they just need some help. You know, I don't know how to deal with these kids. One thing that they struggled with is finding kids. It's the lost child. Where did they go? They aren't turning in the work. They're not getting stuff done. Where are they? I've called them 25 times. I've left messages. And we were wasting a lot of teacher time on that. So we no longer make the teachers, when their students go missing, we actually use a much less expensive call center to dial the students. Go find them. Go find out where they were. Because understand this, if a student disappears and it's after their 28 days, their first 28 days, they now get a bad mark on their transcript. They get an incomplete course, or they fail the course. So it's in the student's best interest to be found.
So I have two follow-up questions on this. One is, from what you say, an online teacher is much more accountable than a normal teacher because all the interaction can be tracked down. So, secondly, is this legally allowed in the States? Can you monitor legally exactly what the teacher is doing when? Because in some situation in Italy, I am afraid it will not be possible to really. We have some strict rule about what can be tracked, monitored, what is not.
The United States is also filled with their own rules and regulations, especially the rules and regulations regarding protection of students. So certain data can't be transmitted, certain data has to be protected, certain things like that. But the United States is making major shifts towards data being one of the drivers of how education is doing. So I, as a school leader, could actually go today and in a traditional school and find out which teachers are doing well, which ones aren't doing well, because you can look at the data of how the students are completing and whether they're completing or not. So there's not as much protection for the teacher, but everything we do has to be done legally because we are state employees. So everything we're doing is done legally. If there's a law to be broken, we won't break it. We can't do that. But understand this, in our environment, our teachers probably do have a little bit more accountability because you know what? If you're on the phone with a teacher, I can actually beep in and listen to your conversation at any time. Okay? I can actually listen to those conversations. If I always tell them I'm doing it, so it's not like it's a surprise. It's like at school, it's a classroom visit, all right? So I can make my classroom visits. But if I'm really worried, I can beep in if I need to.
Ecco, posso? Volevo chiedere quanti ragazzi sono affidati a un docente e il ruolo del tutor.
Okay. The number of students per teacher varies, but the average is 150 at any one time. Now, that's an average. We expect them, of the 150, we expect them to have 125 successful completers. So
150 at any time or per year?
at any time. They always have a load of 150. Okay? If, however, I'm in PE, I probably have 200 kids. If I'm doing honors courses or AP courses, I have 90 kids. So it varies, but that is the normal workload of a U.S. teacher. A U.S. teacher typically has 125 students at all times. Okay?
But I misunderstood some of the data before. If you say the teacher has to make one call per week, it means he has to make 150 calls per week, just
Yes.
for the call.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why you have to learn. You have to learn how to redo your days, because I have 150 phone calls to make.
But evidently teachers don't like
Tutoring. The tutors, a couple different things that we do for tutoring. One form of tutoring is an online tutoring that's instantly available to them. Other types of tutors are we actually have students who are doing tutoring, and it's really helpful to have students do tutoring. We love that. Others, we actually have some teachers set aside to do nothing but tutoring. That's all they do. So while I've given you the impression this teacher is go, 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 all right, they do have a lot of resources to support them as well. I would say in our environment, okay, in Florida, so I'm not in Italy right now, okay, an average teacher is probably spending 50 hours a week on their job. An average U.S. teacher is probably required to work 40. I can tell you my daughter works more than 50 hours a week, easily. So that's about normal. Our teachers are year-round teachers, and they are paid according to the full year, and they start off at about $43,000 US a year is their starting pay, and then they get pay raises as well.
$43,000 più o meno 35.000 euro più o meno.
That is a gross amount before taxes. They also get
più benefits a parte.
And benefits. They also get incentives by students. By that I mean if they're given a target of 125, when they get their 125 completed, they get an incentive. They get more money. All right? If they have a target of 90, when they hit their 90, they get an incentive, more money as well.
Facciamo l'ultima domanda, poi
Sì,
ultime due.
una curiosità, nel senso che ho sentito che voi lavorate con anche, insomma, si iscrivono anche ragazzi o bambini con delle difficoltà. Diciamo, mi interessa soprattutto l'aspetto delle, insomma, magari le famiglie meno abbienti, quelle che hanno più difficoltà economiche. Rispetto a questo e rispetto a un possibile problema anche di digital divide, voi offrite dei punti di accesso fisici proprio nei quali le persone possono collegarsi e partecipare e studiare, insomma, all'interno di questa virtual school?
Yep. Sure. All right. Two questions there. First of all, our program was not designed for students with special needs. It was designed for the average student, but we have 10% of our kids are coming to us with special need requirements. And it so happens that this one-on-one time between teacher and student is really helping those special need children. Plus, sometimes special need children just need a different way of learning. So by doing things online, it might be something that's more attractive to them. But it wasn't something that we originally set out to do. It just happens to be something that happened. We require students to provide their own technology and internet access. And so it's a logical question, what happens when someone cannot afford those things? Some schools have set aside labs where the students may take the courses in labs after school or even during the school day. We have arrangements with over 300 sites in the state of Florida, like libraries and so forth, where we furnish equipment where children may come and use it. And in special cases, we actually have a couple hundred loaner machines that we actually loan out to the student, and we give them money for their internet access for a course, and they're loaned out for a year at a time. And that's like a scholarship, and they have to apply for that. It has to be really drastic. So not having access to the technology is not a valid excuse in the state. Our courses are not written to the high-end technology. They're written much more to a normal platform. So you don't have to have a cajillion gigabytes of memory to make things work, with the exception of those games. Those two courses that are games, they need higher end machines.
In your opinion, the last years, in your opinion, comparing the classical way of teaching and the virtual one, what would you save of the first one, of the classical one?
So understand that I have been working with technology in education for 35 years. So I'm a little biased towards technology. I like technology. In fact, the reason I work at Florida Virtual School, so keep in mind, my office is 500 miles from my house, all right? But I travel a lot, so it's okay. The reason I work at Florida Virtual School is the things that I do that excite me is making a difference in kids' lives, making a difference for the child who is struggling or for whatever reason is not able to learn. I love to find ways for kids to learn. And the reason I work at Florida Virtual is I get to read all these letters from parents that talk about how we saved their child because they were headed down a bad path and we gave them a different way of learning. I am not saying that this is for every child, okay? I'm thinking every child at least needs an experience so they understand what it is. But some kids, like my own kids, all right, they would never have been in Florida Virtual School because they're social. They need to see those other bodies, okay? They need to gab and spend money on clothes. In fact, walking around Milan yesterday, I can tell you my 23-year-old would be just dying in this city. She loves to shop, okay? That's her big thing. But I think this is a way that children can learn more effectively. And what I'm very pleased about is how we're starting to see this technology move into classrooms as well. So I, as a teacher, might have my textbook that I really like, and then I might have what I call a digital program, which might be a supplemental program of some sort that helps kids learn one thing. But then, you know, I'm going to have this virtual content also. And I might have a student who's struggling in something, and I can say, go to the back of the room or the side of the room, I don't care where it is, go online and see if you understand it better with this. Maybe that will help you a little bit. It's just a tool that a teacher can use to be more effective. That's all I really want. And then I can use it at home if I need to as well. So I think it is very much, you know, in the United States, people are generally thinking this is very much the wave of the future. The predictions are that in the United States, by the year 2019, 50% of all high school kids will have taken online courses. So they expect it to be a trend on it. There's a very interesting book, I don't know if it's in Italian or not, called Disrupting Class by Christensen. Chris Christensen is his name. And it talks all about different ways to disrupt learning to make it more effective for kids. And he considers online one of those ways.
Allora, io vorrei fare due domande, sarò brevissimo. Prima di tutto la ringrazio di questo incontro molto interessante. La prima domanda nasce da un'idea che mi sono fatto nel vedere le slides e è questa. I vostri studenti sono dei studenti responsabili. Oggi c'è il ragazzo difficile che proviene da una famiglia difficile. Quando mai non studia a scuola, figuriamoci se poi studia a casa, se si prende l'impegno di mettersi davanti al computer e telefonare al docente. L'altra domanda è questa. La scuola virtuale non allontana i ragazzi, non li fa sentire ancora più soli? Su questa tematica ci sono vari punti in discussione a livello psicologico e psichiatrico. Grazie.
Excellent question. First of all, the student is responsible. A lot of this is on them. They have to learn. It's the teacher that's the coach to move them forward. But that's why it's very important on the front end to talk about why are you taking this and why are they not studying? You know, you try to get under the covers of why are they not. Are they lazy? Are they bored? They don't like lectures? You try to find out a little bit about what motivates that child to see if you can get their interest. That's why I'm very curious to see these video games, how they do, because what I have found so far is the students who love those games hate that subject. So if I can get a child to learn a subject and enjoy learning it in a different format, I'm okay with that. That's good. But not, again, every child wants to learn that way. So we do expect some things from the child, and that's one reason why the parent conversations are important. But you know, you have parents who don't care also. You know, you have parents who shouldn't be parents. There's no difference there. So do we solve the problems of 100% of these kids? No, not at all. But you know, there are kids who from a social standpoint, they're only taking one course or two courses from us. They're still in their school environment, so they're not lonely. They still have their school social being. But you know, we have a number of kids who take us because they hate being in that building because they're being bullied. There's a lot of bullying going on in the United States right now, and students, it's becoming the next big issue of bullying, and you know, kids are committing suicide because they're bullied by other kids. This is one way that kids aren't threatened. We don't care if they weigh 300 pounds. You know, we care what's in their mind. So those kids who are very uncomfortable being in a school environment are very comfortable being in this environment, but most kids aren't in this environment. Now, if I am a homeschool parent who I have elected to pull my child out of public school and they learn at home, it is also very critical that they have a social element to their life, whether that be a sport or whether that be scouting or whatever it is. There has to be something for that child as well. So I think those things are very important there. But we do put a lot on the kid. And you know what? Sometimes they like that responsibility. They don't like being told all the time.
Credo che possiamo chiudere. Diciamo, le ultime domande, diciamo, non è il nostro scopo né proporre il learning come la soluzione della scuola né aprire la domanda generale. Quello che volevo che arrivasse a voi era il senso di, primo, che le cose sono complesse, cioè si fa presto a dire facciamo il learning. Avete visto quanto apparato organizzativo, tecnologico c'è alle spalle, non è che si fa il learning in un attimo, ci vogliono sforzi, dettagli, organizzazione, denaro, cioè è una cosa complessa. La seconda cosa, estremo opposto, è evitare le posizioni ideologiche che uno a priori sa se la cosa funziona o non funziona. Cioè, mi interessava che voi vedeste, con tutte le opinioni che potete portarvi a casa, comunque questa funziona in questo modo e ha questi risultati. Ciascuno di voi è libero di pensare che siano risultati buoni o positivi, però è una realtà empirica. Spesso da noi c'è una realtà ideologica, si discute di una cosa prima che succeda, qui succede, volevo che vedeste cosa succede. La domanda che vi pongo è, loro hanno già deciso negli Stati Uniti, ne commentavo prima il professor Piscitelli, che e-learning è una delle competenze trasversali dei ragazzi, loro lì le hanno deciso. In Italia no, però pensateci, il dubbio per voi, forse qualcuno ormai della generazione ha superato il problema, è non è che diventa una vostra competenza trasversale essere i teacher, cioè non è che prima o poi arriverà il fatto che tra le competenze di un teacher si chiederà anche di essere un distance teacher, non solo credo, diciamo, è interessante il fenomeno, se diventa obbligatorio per i ragazzi avere anche la competenza di fare un corso online, credo che prima o poi arriverà pure per i docenti a dire devi sapere erogare un corso online. E vedete come loro lo prendono seriamente, non è che dicono a un teacher vai e insegna, lo curano, lo seguono, lo addestrano, lo monitorano, insomma è una situazione complessa, per cui credo la lezione, per fare cose complesse ci vogliono anche mezzi e organizzazioni complesse. Adesso pausa e Aldo vi dà gli annunci necessari.
Allora, logistica, non restituite adesso le cuffie perché altrimenti, visto che dobbiamo restituite adesso le cuffie, poi il pranzo
L'importante è che loro siano coordinati tra di loro, come avete visto.
coordinamento oculo manuale. Dopodiché il pranzo è servito oltre questa porta, lanciatevi tranquillamente. Prima però, qua su questo banco, trovate i biglietti da visita di Andy, che ha detto che se volete scrivergli, lui risponde molto volentieri. Se qualcuno fosse in imbarazzo per scrivere in inglese, scrivete a noi e noi traduciamo, glielo mandiamo e facciamo da collettori. Quindi lui è molto disponibile, approfittiamone. Buon appetito.
Depends on how much time you have, but I think you will be coming back. Okay, I hope you'll be coming back, so we'll have plenty of time.
You have
Bring
been
your family.